So how do we use bell ringers and practices and homeworks and different things that we might be doing also as formative assessments? So we're going to talk about that first. We need to understand what is a formative assessment, or what people might call an assessment in action. Something you're assessing the learning that is taking place, not the final learning. So what's so powerful about formative assessments is the student still has time to change the answers, understand where they went wrong or where they went right, and be able to work with that to expand their learning. So this is taken from the assessment is for learning, formative assessments and positive learning interactions. This is from the Florida Journal of Education. But number one, the first principle is students must be able to understand clearly what they are trying to learn and what is expected of them. So you probably have noticed in our pacing charts within the membership, if you're using those materials, I have I can statements. That is going to help you very clearly understand or demonstrate to them or communicate with them what they need to learn. And then they also need to, within those I can statements, understand the vocabulary that goes along with it. Number two, students must be given feedback about the quality of their work and what they can do to make it better. This feedback can come from you, or it can come from maybe a peer. So it could be peer-to-peer feedback. It can be teacher-to-student feedback. But they must be given some sort of feedback about how they're doing, if they're on the right track. The third key principle is that students must be given advice about how to go about making improvements. So there needs to be some really good questioning that will lead them that way. There needs to be some advice about how they can make it better, maybe some correction. But that feedback piece and the advice piece are really vital to helping them get on the right track. Number four, students must be fully involved in deciding what needs to be done next. This is where your questioning techniques that we talked so much about in week 1 and week 2 come into play. Students must be fully involved, so your questions are going to help them figure out what direction they should go and what needs to be done. Do they need to ask for help? Do they need to just fix a mathematical error? What exactly needs to be done next? And then finally, the fifth one. Students must be aware of who can give them help if they need it. Whether that's a help room, whether that's an older brother, you, they must be aware also of when you're available and how to get in touch with you. So, for example, at the end, I always say, if you need me, drop me an email and we'll set up a time to talk. And that's certainly true. How can your students do that? Could they show up for help hours? Is there one day a week where you give up your lunch and work with students or have lunch with the students? Is there a time where you can host some peer-to-peer tutoring, or does your school have like a math homework room? So letting the students be really aware, and do not assume that they remember it. If you offer me tutoring and I'm in chapter 1 and I totally get it, I may not have listened to you really well. But as we get into chapters 4 and 5 and they get more difficult and now I need tutoring, I may need to hear where that room is one more time. So just make sure that they are aware and we give them the benefit of the doubt as we're working through that. So the other thing that I would say about formative assessments is this should not be something you need to create that's new. Use what you already have. So those practice pages, maybe you have them work on number 1, 2, and 3, and you're going to really give some feedback just on those 3 questions. That's going to be really helpful. So Grant Wiggins is very respected in the math community. His blog, Teach Thought, he has a blog post called Using Formative Assessment as Homework. And I like the way he put it. If you need permission to, some of us have always heard you cannot grade formative assessment. We're going to talk about what to do as you grade it. But if you need permission first, let's talk about that. He says, in short, no matter the pure definition, I don't think it is accurate to say that formative assessments can't ever be graded. What matters, what makes a formative assessment formative, is whether I have a chance to get and use feedback in a later version of the same performance. So the same problem, the same type of problem solving, can they work on it? Can they fix it? Can they keep learning with that same assessment? It's only formative if it's ongoing. If it's summative, it's the final chance, the summing up of student performance. And I love the way he simplifies it there. So as long as we give them a chance for revisions, we can call that formative assessments, and we can get a very good picture of what the students understand. So let's talk about how we can do that. I would like you to think about, if you're using something, I'm not saying every paper you hand out needs to be a formative assessment, but if you are using it as a formative assessment, the papers probably need to be returned the very next day, if not during class. You could do a peer-to-peer revision, and they would get it right back. You could do a teacher-to-student evaluation or feedback. That's going to be a lot of work for you. What I usually do is rotate that. So first hour might get a teacher to student feedback. The rest of my classes may get a peer-to-peer. The next time, second hour might get a teacher to student feedback, and the rest of my classes will get a peer-to-peer. That way I have one set of papers to grade, because I strongly feel that good feedback and questions written on those papers is going to be more effective than shorter feedback written out for all 100 of them or 150 of them. So that's the first thing I like to say, is really make sure that if you're doing formative assessments, they're really quality and students have a chance to really grow for them. Encourage that growth. Tell them that, yes, you got this grade, but we are going to look at it. We're going to talk about how to, change it, or have them read the comments. I would also encourage you, don't grade everything. A lot of times students will see the grade on the paper. What they're looking for is the grade. Once they see that grade, the need to learn something new has gone. They're not going to read it. I want you to think about the match activity we did in week 2. I asked you to move the matches and make it true. And once you found one answer, you stopped looking for others. As we continued that conversation, we had a lot more options there. There were a lot of right ways to do that problem. But what happened once you found one is you shut down. The same thing happens with the students when they get a paper back with a grade on the top. They can shut down if you're not going to collect it again. So if you are going to collect it again, you've given good feedback, you want to see how they've improved, tell them that before you hand it back, so that you don't end up dealing with the headache of, oh, I threw it in the trash, I didn't know you were going to want it. And then allow, if you are calling it formative assessment, you must allow for revisions. It needs to be forming. The knowledge is being formed. It is ongoing. So make sure that you allow for those revisions. So what I would like to know from you tonight is, do you use formative assessments? Go ahead and fill out the poll to the right. And then I would ask you why or why not. If you could put that into the comments, that would be really helpful. I'd love to have a conversation right now about if you use formative assessments, why or why not, and is there anything we can do, a brainstorm, to help you to implement them in your classroom. So let's go ahead and take a look at that now.